Looky, ya, we got some roly blues up yonder. Gonna get magic on afore we hits Lutox, the Rag's co-driver shouted over his shoulder. He raised and lowered his three-fingered right hand in the air for extra emphasis. John Ratham lifted his head and was immediately buffeted by a rushing wind laced with heat and sulfur. Strands of his long brown hair, no longer carefully combed and tied in the back, fluttered freely. He sneezed and squinted, looking around to see if anyone else understood the man's colorful patois. It was a wasted effort. 2 rows of military officers and crown representatives rode single file on either side of the Rag's spine. They sat on saddles, really just leather-padded wooden planks affixed to the Rag's scales with finger-sized spikes. Facing forward, all had their heads down to keep them out of the wind. In one amazing case, an officer appeared to be fast asleep. "Took 'em straps up in ya?" the co-driver said, waving his abbreviated hand around for emphasis. Hope he flies better than he talks, John thought. An assumption that at least the Rag's driver would be of more refined material was wrecked on that man's fist-sized wad of chewing tobacco crammed into his right cheek. It was, as the driver had so eloquently informed John before takeoff, so he could enjoy my victuals side by each with my jaw. The Rag's wings began beating faster. John instinctively flinched as the wings rose up like 2 sea behemoths breaching on either side of him before rumbling back down. The wind rushed past his head like heavy, invisible waves eroding him bit by bit. A not-so-gentle force began to push John down into his saddle as the Rag started climbing higher into the sky, her long torso undulating with the strain. She coughed, spewing out a shower of sparks that stung John's face. That was followed by a billowing cloud of inky black smoke that temporarily obscured everything from view. John closed his eyes and held his breath for a few moments. When he opened them again and inhaled, the air was clear, save for the ever-present heat and smell of sulfur. The Rag was coughing more frequently now. The scales beneath his ankle-high leather boots were getting hotter, too, but he couldn't tell if that was from the broiling sun high above his left shoulder or the Rag's guts heating up from the inside. John craned his head around to check the position of the sun. He calculated they'd been in the air almost 2 full candles since taking off from Swazi Island on the second leg of their cross-ocean flight, from the kingdom to Luto. Though it was correctly pronounced Luto, not Lutox, as the co-driver kept calling it, John was keeping his mouth shut. The crew might have been a pair of bumpkins from some deep, dark forest province where the sunshine had to be carried in by buckets, but they apparently knew how to control and fly a 10-ton Rag. That earned them his respect. John winced as the Rag dipped and then jerked back up. He clenched his fists as a searing pain lit his lower back muscles on fire. He'd debated staying on Swazi for a few days to rest and get used to the heat. The half-day he'd spent on a different Rag just getting that far had been painful enough. Besides, his orders to report to the 7th Phalanx gave him another week to get there. Wandering around Swazi for a candle, however, had changed his mind and he'd taken the next Rag out. Barely rising above the waves, Swazi was a long brown smear across the ocean. Its features could be counted on one hand. Wind-bent palm trees, a rambling series of huts making up the naval way station, a hastily constructed canvas tent sanatorium filled with sick and wounded soldiers evacuating from Luto, and a huge burn pit behind the sanatorium that gave off a greasy, thick smoke the entire time he was there. And I volunteered for this. It had been a rash decision, but one he didn't regret. Life in the kingdom for his kind wasn't what it had once been. The change had happened virtually overnight with the bastard revelation. A royal historian, no good muckraker as John's mother put it, found proof that King Winthorpe and the 2 monarchs before him were descended from the pairing of Queen Arbora and the royal huntsman, Caufrey Darminkin. Every king and prince who followed was illegitimate. Instead of a monarch, chaos now reigned. In one fell swoop, the very notion of the royalty was called into question. Rightful heirs popped out of the woodwork like so many noxious bubbles from a witch's boiling cauldron, and were just as appealing. In the span of a fortnight, 5 distinct high councils emerged, laying claim to